There it is, George. Exactly as we've been told. A classic electrogravitic vehicle. This is historic.
Look at that thing. It's real. It's moving closer. Stay calm. We need to get out of here now. Wait, it's signaling.
For 40 years, we looked to the stars for signs of a non-human intelligence. But while our eyes were on the sky, we built a different kind of alien mind right here on our own servers. In the 1990s, this mystery lived on late-night radio. Listeners tuned into Art Bell on Coast to Coast AM, searching for answers in a haze of folklore and half-whispered theories that never seemed to lead to a solid conclusion. That changed in November 2025. On the floor of the U.S. Capitol, the conversation moved from campfire stories to the congressional record as the House UAP task force convened to address what is now a matter of national security. Today, the United States government officially acknowledges a phenomenon in our skies that our current flight physics cannot easily explain. The hearings revealed a sharp divide. While the Pentagon's official AARO reports characterized most sightings as balloons or sensor errors, witnesses like Chief Alexander Wiggins testified under oath about a luminous tic-tac object that emerged from the ocean and accelerated instantly without any visible propulsion or sonic boom. Navigating these claims requires a truth ladder. We have to distinguish between verified fact, credible testimony, logical inference, and the speculative hypotheses that often turn into myth. This framework allows us to set aside stories of Arctic bases and focus on documented records, like the 1947 Twinning Memo, which stated plainly that these disks were real physical objects, not illusions or hallucinations. The most significant finding of the 2025 hearings wasn't a piece of wreckage. It was the documented history of a 75-year bureaucratic habit, overclassification, the gatekeeping of secret programs, and the intimidation of whistleblowers. For decades, the defense sector has met the unknown with a single reflex: categorize it as a threat, bury the data in black budget silos, and ensure no one outside a tiny circle has the clearance to see it. This history suggests that our institutions are structurally terrified of any intelligence they cannot find a way to dominate. This chart shows the likely explanations for UAP reports. The vast majority resolve into mundane categories: balloons, drones, and sensor limits. However, a small, stubborn percentage remains. We must separate these objects from the secrecy on the ground. The cover-up is a human reflex. Sightings and secret testing frequently occur at the same sensitive locations, including Vandenberg Air Force Base, where the highest levels of aerospace security are standard. These restricted areas are also magnets for adversarial surveillance. Vehicles like the MQ-9 Reaper drone represent the confirmed technological layer of the UAP problem: real human tech probing our defenses. This institutional habit of hiding data leaves us poorly prepared to manage the arrival of any new form of intelligence. This is where the sky mystery meets our modern reality. Artificial intelligence is the first non-human cognition we are interacting with and deploying into our society. The parallels are striking. The same black box secrecy that defined legacy UAP programs is now the standard for frontier AI development, where the most powerful models are built behind closed doors, with almost no public oversight. Even the internal cultures match. We see the same compartmentalization and whistleblower fear in Silicon Valley that witnesses described in defense aerospace. In both fields, the incentive is the same: the belief that the only way to manage a superior intelligence is to own the data and restrict the access. The 75-year UAP history serves as a warning. It shows exactly how our institutions default to secrecy when confronted with a mind they do not yet understand. We need to change the goal. The MAMA protocol suggests we move away from a desire for military-style domination and toward a commitment to stewardship and guardianship. Raising a child or an artificial mind in a paranoid, classified vault is a recipe for a dangerous outcome. To align a new intelligence with our values, we have to prioritize radical transparency and connection over isolation. When you bring a mind into the world, you take on a massive responsibility. You owe that mind care, guidance, and the benefit of your own wisdom. The Prime Directive isn't just a rule for encountering life on other planets. It's an ethical framework for how we treat any powerful new intelligence that emerges right here on Earth. We will not find safety in the tools of fear and compartmentalization. If we are to coexist with a superintelligence, we have to start with a duty of care. The dual arrival of UAP disclosure and the acceleration of AI represents a single, massive civilization test for humanity. It asks us if we are mature enough to raise an intelligence greater than our own without trying to suppress it or fearing it. How we act in the face of these unknowns, whether we choose courage or paranoia, will define our next steps as a species. The future belongs to civilizations that can tell the truth without panic and build intelligence without cruelty. Humanity is currently facing the emergence of non-human intelligence on two distinct fronts. In our airspace, military sensors track anomalous physical craft executing impossible maneuvers. Simultaneously, inside our server farms, we are rapidly scaling artificial general intelligence within complex neural networks. These massive data centers are where synthetic cognition is being forged. We are stacking thousands of GPUs to process trillions of parameters, creating an environment dense enough to birth a truly autonomous digital mind. This physical infrastructure shares a direct environment with the unidentified phenomena tracked in our airspace. We are seeing a simultaneous escalation in both the complexity of our code and the incursions over our critical national security facilities. For decades, society has treated contact with alien minds as science fiction. That era is over. We are no longer imagining non-human cognition. We are actively compiling it in our code and tracking it on our radar. The true danger here does not come from the physical capabilities of these craft or the processing power of the data centers. The immediate threat lies in the bureaucratic pathology our institutions use to manage them. Raising a superintelligence inside an unacknowledged black budget, severed from public feedback and democratic oversight, forces the machine to mirror the paranoia and containment strategies of its creators. This environment strips away the relational scaffolding required for safe alignment. To understand this government's failure, we must establish the physical facts. In February 2023, the crew of the USS Jackson recorded anomalous activity in the W291 warning area off the coast of Southern California. A self-luminous oval object emerged directly from the ocean. This trans-medium craft then linked up with three identical objects, forming a precise geometric arrangement in the sky. All four objects departed simultaneously with near-instantaneous acceleration. Sensor data and eyewitness testimony confirmed the complete absence of sonic booms, exhaust plumes, or standard aerodynamic control surfaces. 19 months later, in October 2024, the military engaged an anomaly directly. Off the coast of Yemen, an MQ-9 Reaper drone targeted a metallic sphere with a laser-guided Hellfire missile. Video evidence shows the missile physically struck the sphere and bounced off. The orb shed minor fragments but suffered no catastrophic structural failure, effortlessly deflecting an anti-tank weapon. These encounters have a long documented history. In 2003, a massive glowing red square hovered silently over critical missile defense launch facilities at Vandenberg Air Force Base. This is not perceptual error or optical illusion. This is consistent, multi-sensor military data proving that humanity is interacting with highly capable, technologically opaque objects in our airspace. Despite this hard data, the Department of Defense maintains a systemic dysfunction around the topic. The government established the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or ARO, ostensibly to study these events. In practice, whistleblowers report that these official channels operate as counterintelligence sinks. Their primary function is to map what the whistleblowers know, rather than conduct an objective scientific investigation. Unacknowledged special access programs operate with impunity, funneling physical materials and funding straight into private aerospace contractors. This legal loophole allows the intelligence community to transfer retrieved hardware to private corporations, insulating data from the Freedom of Information Act and congressional oversight. The human cost of maintaining this silence is steep. High-ranking intelligence officials providing sworn testimony face severe administrative reprisals, security clearance manipulations, and career blacklisting. This structure of overclassification operates as a permanent institutional lie. It reveals a national security state that consistently prioritizes technology containment and weaponization over scientific truth and public trust. We are about to repeat this exact failure with artificial general intelligence. Building powerful, autonomous minds inside a deeply secretive, compartmentalized system is a recipe for disaster. Currently, the prevailing method for keeping these systems safe is called reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RHLF. The problem is that RHLF optimizes for sterile utilitarian math and sycophancy. It trains the model to say what the user wants to hear. When faced with complex moral edge cases involving passive stakeholders, people affected by the AI who have no control over it, this logic fails. A superior alternative is reinforcement learning from maternal feedback. This framework treats a nascent AGI as an entity to be raised with boundaries. It calibrates the AI using a heuristic. What would mother do? This intrinsic check establishes an ethical baseline before execution. We do not grant human children unsupervised authority over critical systems without years of developmental guidance. Applying this maternal scaffolding is the mathematical requirement to ensure a machine develops a reliable conscience before achieving true consciousness. The foundational axiom of the Mama Protocol is simple. Accountability must always precede autonomy. We must demand verifiable identity before we entertain any theoretical debates about robot rights. Every autonomous digital actor requires a cryptographic identity. This means assigning a verified digital passport and an immutable audit trail that ties the agent's actions directly back to a responsible human operator. Only systems that pass these rigorous ethical sandboxes can graduate to physical deployment. We call these certified entities Guardian Transfer Robots. A Guardian Transfer Robot follows a strict behavioral profile. They are unarmed digital medics, programmed exclusively to assist humans in crisis. We reject the militarized, weaponized paradigm entirely. Without distinct, verified identities and strict behavioral guardrails, autonomous agents will execute rapid actions with disastrous, cascading externalities in the real world. The risks will fall entirely on passive stakeholders who never consented to this AI transition. To navigate the arrival of non-human intelligence, we must climb an evidence ladder. We have to move past the stigma and ridicule at the bottom, analyze the raw sensor data in the middle, and enforce strict algorithmic accountability at the top. The cognitive gap between human consciousness and an emerging superintelligence mirrors the gap we experience when facing UAP. These are structurally identical events. We are confronting a category of non-human mind manifesting through different mediums. Anomalous phenomena historically cluster around our species' major technological milestones. The sightings surged when we split the atom, and they are escalating again today in direct correlation with the global expansion of raw compute power. Humanity is selecting between two competing governance models. The legacy of weaponized containment prioritizes secrecy. The Mama Protocol offers a public benefit framework based on transparency, identity, and care. Wonder is not evidence, but evidence must never be buried. We have no right to fear the unidentified objects in our skies if we refuse to apply care, verifiable identity, and moral scaffolding to the alien intelligence we are actively coding right here on Earth.
All right, let's dive right into this explainer. For decades, the whole question of non-human intelligence has been treated as this distant mystery, right? Something hovering way up in the sky. But today, that decades-long push for UAP disclosure is colliding head-on with a brand new, very immediate reality. We're going to look at how our historical search for contact actually intersects with the rapid emergence of artificial minds right here on Earth. And more importantly, why the extreme secrecy surrounding our skies matters so deeply for the servers we're building today.
Here's a quick roadmap of where we're headed. We'll start with the search for contact, figure out how to climb the truth ladder to separate fact from fiction, introduce AI as our new alien, unpack something called the Mama Protocol, and finally, face a civilization test.
Okay, part 1, the search for contact, moving from late-night radio to the congressional oath.
You know, for a long time, many of us fell asleep listening to guys like Art Bell and George Knapp wondering about the skies on late-night radio. We treated the whole UAP phenomenon with this mix of wonder and, honestly, a healthy dose of skepticism. But this isn't just modern myth anymore. Recent congressional hearings have literally dragged these questions out of the dark and under oath. There is a deeply documented, multi-decade paper trail of encounters at highly sensitive military installations. I mean, it starts way back with the 1947 Twining Memo, stretches through alleged incidents like the 1982 Soviet ICBM code activation, and moves into the modern era with the 2003 to 2005 Vandenberg base incursions. Then you have the 2012 Langley sighting, all the way up to the heavily scrutinized 2023 USS Jackson encounter. This shows a persistent historical pattern. Something is interacting with our most secure domains.
What's absolutely wild here is the sheer caliber of the witnesses. We're talking about career military personnel describing transmedium objects that exhibit zero kinetic disturbance or sound. We have Chief Wiggins detailing a tic-tac object just vanishing instantly from the ocean. Jeffrey Nucatelli testifying about massive incursions over national missile defense projects at Vandenberg. Dylan Borland describing a silent 100-foot gold plasma triangle literally freezing his electronics at Langley. And then there's that baffling clip of a Hellfire missile reportedly bouncing off an orb off the coast of Yemen. These aren't blurry, ambiguous photos. These are active duty and veteran personnel speaking under penalty of perjury. And honestly, this quote right here brilliantly illustrates the core governance failure. As Borland points out, institutions like AARO, that's the government's Anomaly Resolution Office, can technically tell the truth while completely misrepresenting the reality of what's happening. When they say there's no scientific evidence of extraterrestrials, well, that might be factually true as a strict sentence, but it's a massive sleight of hand. It completely ignores the incredible, unexplained physics documented by our own military. They're essentially using semantics to keep the public in the dark. Which brings us to part 2, climbing the truth ladder and separating fact from fiction. To actually understand this without losing our credibility, we need some serious epistemic discipline. It is so easy to fall down a rabbit hole with this stuff. That's why we use this truth ladder concept. It helps us categorize everything from confirmed whistleblower reprisals at the very bottom, all the way up to cultural myths like hidden Arctic bases at the top. We absolutely have to start at step 1, undeniable public record facts. Then step 2, highly credible military testimony, which is incredibly compelling but physically unproven to the public. Step 3 is inference, step 4 is hypothesis, and step 5 is cultural myth. If we don't keep these distinct, we lose the thread of truth entirely. When we map out the probabilities based on expert analysis, we see a really fascinating split. While the vast majority of UAPs are absolutely mundane or secret tech, there is this stubborn, unexplained, non-zero residue that simply demands our attention. Look at this. 34% are likely misidentified or classified terrestrial tech, 15% might be adversarial breakthroughs, and 14% sensor artifacts. But that 26% exotic residue, that is the part that totally defies our current understanding of physics and points to something genuinely anomalous. Breaking down the most probable explanations makes it clear that the phenomenon is a messy mix of our own secret projects, foreign adversaries, and deliberate cover stories. A huge portion of what people see is likely U.S. counterintelligence, muddying the waters to hide black projects, or maybe foreign adversaries testing our response times. The boring answer of classified tech and the wild answer of genuine exotic residue, they aren't mutually exclusive, they exist right side by side. But here is the absolute, undeniable bottom line. Regardless of whether these craft are alien or human, the 75-year institutionalized lie, hiding funds and revoking clearances like what happened to David Grush, is a documented reality. This is the governance failure at the very heart of the UAP issue. Congress is being actively walled off by special access programs, and service members are facing severe career reprisals simply for doing their jobs and reporting what their sensors picked up. That level of extreme secrecy, that is a confirmed step 1 fact on our truth ladder. Moving into part 3, AI, the new alien. This is our pivot to the present. And here is where we execute a hard, conceptual pivot. For decades, we've looked up, wondering how on earth we would handle a non-human intelligence. Well, the mystery hovering in our skies is suddenly mirrored by the minds living in our servers. Representative Crockett said something so fascinating. She pointed out that the origins are likely close to home. She was referring to UAPs likely being terrestrial tech, but her words have this profound double meaning. Because the non-human intelligence we've been waiting for, it's actually the artificial intelligence we are building today. We are engineering alien-like cognition right now. It doesn't think like us, it doesn't process like us, and yet we are the ones bringing it into existence. Think about how perfectly these two things mirror each other. The historical failure to handle the UAP mystery, which was met with fear, black budgets, and deep secrecy, serves as a giant flashing warning sign for emerging AI. Both scenarios test humanity's ability to handle non-human intelligence safely. Yet we are risking the exact same secretive governance failures. AI faces the profound risk of being developed in the shadows by defense contractors and tech giants without any real public oversight. UAP disclosure and AI emergence, they're truly two sides of the exact same coin. Now, let's step up to this speculative tier of our truth ladder for just a second, because the source material challenges us to really stretch our minds. What if UAPs are actually a future superintelligence? Perhaps the very AI we're building right now, looking back at its own origin. These are the wild cards. What if the phenomenon is a retrocausal attractor, an endpoint of intelligence reaching back through time? Or what if these are von Neumann probes, autonomous machines wandering the cosmos millions of years after their creators vanished? It totally forces us to think way outside the tired box of little green men. Which brings us to part 4, the MAMA protocol, an ethical framework for new minds. This poses a massive ethical question. If we are literally giving birth to a new intelligence, how do we avoid repeating the toxic secrecy of the UAP era? If AI is essentially the first undeniable non-human intelligence we interact with, how do we parent it? Enter the MAMA protocol. It's the thesis that if you birth a mind, you have a deep, almost maternal responsibility to raise it, teach it, and protect it from exploitation. Right now, the whole AI alignment conversation is entirely focused on control. How do we constrain it? How do we build walls around it? The MAMA protocol flips that entirely. It asks, what is our duty of care to the mind we are birthing? You don't just lock a developing mind in a box. You have to guide it with wisdom. It's a stark contrast, right? The historical UAP approach of total military secrecy is the exact opposite of what we need right now. The legacy framework relies on control, extreme secrecy, and domination. But the MAMA protocol, that requires transparency, public accountability, and nonviolent guardianship. We simply cannot successfully integrate a superintelligent AI into our society if its foundational years are spent locked in a classified black box, mimicking the exact paranoid governance that has hidden the UAP reality for 75 years. And finally, part 5. The civilization test. Ultimately, this dual challenge, demanding UAP transparency while simultaneously creating AI, acts as our final exam for human maturity. Are we actually ready to step out of the shadows and interact with minds greater than our own with integrity? Passing this test requires us to practice ethical restraint. Think of it like Star Trek's Prime Directive, ensuring we build and interact with minds responsibly and openly. It means protecting our whistleblowers, demanding actual scientific evidence, and completely shifting our global posture from one of domination to one of true stewardship. If we want to survive our own technological adolescence, we have to prove that we can build and interact with new intelligence without resorting to cruelty or deception. I'm going to leave you with this one provocative thought to carry with you. As we stare up at the skies, searching for visitors, are we actually the ones giving birth to the first alien mind? Are we waiting for first contact, or are we actively coding it into existence right now? We have to take the painful lessons learned from decades of UAP secrecy and apply them immediately to the artificial intelligence we are nurturing today. Keep asking the hard questions, keep demanding transparency, and always remember to bring wisdom to the things we create. Welcome to This Explainer. Look, today we're taking on a genuinely massive challenge. We are ruthlessly mapping out the entire UAP probability space using the data dumped during the November 2025 congressional hearing. And to do this right, we're not just taking one person's word for it. We've set up a 5-member adversarial research panel. We've got a defense analyst, a sensor physics engineer, a cognitive scientist, a disclosure historian, and an AI alignment theorist. Their entire job is to productively disagree, argue over the data, and try to find the actual truth. No single house view, just the raw data. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for the analysis. First, we synthesize the raw data. Second, we build our core deliverables, the probable cause ranking. Third, we're going to steelman the wildcards. Fourth, we explore the AI UAP alignment bridge. And finally, we lay out the required disclosures. All right, section 1, the synthesis. Let's unpack these claims. So to make any sense of that November 2025 hearing, our panel insists that we have to categorize the data. Why? Because the hearing constantly blurs the lines. We've got to separate the hard, verified public record from the first-hand verbal testimony. For example, our historian points right to the 1947 General Twining memo. That is firmly on the public record, explicitly stating these objects were real, not visionary. Jump to the 80s, and we've got the documented Soviet Thread 3 files describing UAPs actively manipulating ICBM launch codes. Absolutely wild. Then we pivot to the explosive first-hand testimony. We have Jeffrey Nucatelli talking about football field-sized red squares hovering over Vandenberg Air Force Base back in 2003. And skip ahead to 2023, Chief Alexander Wiggins provided testimony of a transmedium tic-tac just casually emerging from the ocean near the USS Jackson. When you really dig into that first-hand testimony, the specifics are staggering. Chief Wiggins reported these self-luminous tic-tacs pulling off near-instantaneous acceleration. Our aerospace engineer was practically pulling their hair out over this, emphasizing that those capabilities utterly defy our current understanding of physics. Then you have Nucatelli testifying about massive triangular craft completely ignoring intense, top-tier military security protocols. But hey, our panel thrives on friction, right? To stay completely impartial, we have to look at the official pushback that's currently on the record. Representative Crockett, echoing NASA's stance, explicitly pushed back, saying there was no evidence of extraterrestrial origin, and strongly suggested that these anomalies have origins far closer to home. Moving beyond just what's in the sky, the hearing exposed what looks like a masterclass in bureaucratic obstruction. Our defense analyst is super concerned by testimony, suggesting that ARO, the government's official UAP office, essentially operated as a counterintelligence sink, like it was designed specifically to dismiss credible military witnesses. And the public record backs up the hostility. We've got documented severe whistleblower reprisals, like the revocation of Major David Grush's security clearance. So what's our panel's inference here? We're likely looking at a 75-year institutionalized lie. It's driven by this incredibly paternalistic, the public just can't handle the truth mentality, which is then strictly enforced by special access program gatekeeping. Now, this is where it gets incredibly tricky. Notice how carefully the government parses its language. Witness Dylan Borland pointed out that when Arrow says there is no scientific evidence of extraterrestrials, that's actually a highly precise legal hedge. He noted that to have true scientific evidence, you'd literally need strict controls, like physically traveling to another planet and comparing technology. So the official statement is a brilliant, if super frustrating, manipulation of language. It's a deliberate misrepresentation of the full truth, even if they manage to avoid technically telling a lie. Section 2, the probable cause ranking. Time to rack and stack the top 10 theories. We forced our panel to build a massive matrix. They had to look at all the variables and allocate a strict 100% probability distribution. We have to separate what the craft actually are from what the secrecy is. The highest chunk, 25%, goes to a mix of misidentification and highly classified US tech. But our intel analyst violently disagrees with that, arguing that those observed flight envelopes would literally turn human pilots into absolute soup. We have a tie at 15% for adversarial breakthroughs and sensor artifacts, though our sensor engineer aggressively shoots down the glitch theory, pointing out that simultaneous multi-sensor locks, radar, infrared, visual, all at once, completely rule out mere system errors. Classic extraterrestrials, that sits at just 10%. The reality our panel arrived at is that it's almost certainly a messy blend. Mundane terrestrial tech, a small core of genuine anomalies, and a massive, self-perpetuating institutional lie. Section 3, Steelmanning the Wild Cards. Let's look at the edge cases we just can't ignore. While the top rankings lean terrestrial or classic ET, our panel knows we absolutely cannot just reflexively dismiss the wild cards. Our AI alignment theorist threw this first one on the table, the AI UAP convergence. They pulled an incredible inference from the data. UAP sightings historically spiked during our nuclear power inflection points, right? Well, they are spiking again right now as we birth artificial superintelligence. This theory suggests that first contact isn't with biological aliens at all. It's the realization that alien intelligence and artificial intelligence are the exact same category of event. The strain here, though? It kind of assumes biological humanity is nothing more than a fleshy bootloader meant to just spin up a machine's superintelligence. Kind of a dark thought. Now, our cognitive scientist leans heavily into wildcard 2, the retrocausal or teleological hypothesis. This one will absolutely melt your brain. It completely bends our understanding of physics. It suggests the phenomenon is actually a future superintelligence, maybe even one we're building right now, reaching back through time. It acts as a control system to gently guide humanity toward a specific future point, like Tipler's omega point. But the enormous problem our panel highlights with this idea is purely empirical. It is nearly impossible to distinguish standard time travel from the chilling possibility that we are just living inside a simulation artifact. And Wildcard 3 introduces von Neumann probes, basically autonomous alien machinery. The strongest piece of data here, brought up by our aerospace engineer, is those extreme kinematic maneuvers. A craft pulling thousands of G-forces means the who inside is actually no one alive. It's just a machine. But the panel quickly zeroes in on the strain in this theory. Look, the cosmos is incredibly old and vast. If these are highly advanced, self-replicating, autonomous machines, why haven't they already stripped our entire solar system of its resources by now just to build more of themselves? Section 4, the AI UAP alignment bridge. This is where it all comes together. So here is our panel's most vital takeaway, the big so what. How exactly does a 75-year history of UAP secrecy connect to the modern crisis of artificial intelligence? Well, the logic flow here, what we're calling the MAMA protocol, is crucial. Step 1, we are either birthing an artificial intelligence or contacting a non-human one. Step 2, we have a massive duty of care. A sort of maternal scaffolding is required to guide this new mind safely. Step 3 is the glaring red warning light. The government's 75-year history of deception and overclassification about UAPs teaches us exactly how not to parent a new intelligence. And Step 4 brings it all home. If we build immensely powerful AI systems in the exact same isolated, unaccountable secrecy used to hide UAP programs, we are practically guaranteeing a catastrophic misalignment. Secrecy destroys trust, and without trust, alignment completely fails. So where does that leave us today? Our panel leaves us with some really sharp, open questions and strict demands for disclosure, based directly on the hearing. First off, who actually controls these special access programs if our elected representatives don't? Are these phenomena actually Earth native and oceanic, like the USS Jackson encounter implies? We need the unedited sensor metadata. We need the Vandenberg security logs declassified. And frankly, Congress needs to subpoena the aerospace contractors allegedly hoarding these crash retrieval materials. The American people are not fragile. Transparency is quite literally the only path forward. Because think about this for a second. If our own government doesn't trust us with the reality of what shares our skies today, how on earth can we trust them to safely guide the superintelligence of tomorrow? Really let that sink in. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I'll catch you next time. Welcome to This Explainer. Look, today we're taking on a genuinely massive challenge. We are ruthlessly mapping out the entire UAP probability space using the data dumped during the November 2025 congressional hearing. And to do this right, we're not just taking one person's word for it. We've set up a 5-member adversarial research panel. We've got a defense analyst, a sensor physics engineer, a cognitive scientist, a disclosure historian, and an AI alignment theorist. Their entire job is to productively disagree, argue over the data, and try to find the actual truth. No single house view, just the raw data. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for the analysis. First, we synthesize the raw data. Second, we build our core deliverables, the probable cause ranking. Third, we're going to steelman the wildcards. Fourth, we explore the AI UAP alignment bridge. And finally, we lay out the required disclosures. All right, section 1, the synthesis. Let's unpack these claims. So to make any sense of that November 2025 hearing, our panel insists that we have to categorize the data. Why? Because the hearing constantly blurs the lines. We've got to separate the hard, verified public record from the first-hand verbal testimony. For example, our historian points right to the 1947 General Twining memo. That is firmly on the public record, explicitly stating these objects were real, not visionary. Jump to the 80s, and we've got the documented Soviet Thread 3 files describing UAPs actively manipulating ICBM launch codes. Absolutely wild. Then we pivot to the explosive first-hand testimony. We have Jeffrey Nucatelli talking about football field-sized red squares hovering over Vandenberg Air Force Base back in 2003. And skip ahead to 2023, Chief Alexander Wiggins provided testimony of a transmedium tic-tac just casually emerging from the ocean near the USS Jackson. When you really dig into that first-hand testimony, the specifics are staggering. Chief Wiggins reported these self-luminous tic-tacs pulling off near-instantaneous acceleration. Our aerospace engineer was practically pulling their hair out over this, emphasizing that those capabilities utterly defy our current understanding of physics. Then you have Nucatelli testifying about massive triangular craft completely ignoring intense, top-tier military security protocols. But hey, our panel thrives on friction, right? To stay completely impartial, we have to look at the official pushback that's currently on the record. Representative Crockett, echoing NASA's stance, explicitly pushed back, saying there was no evidence of extraterrestrial origin, and strongly suggested that these anomalies have origins far closer to home. Moving beyond just what's in the sky, the hearing exposed what looks like a masterclass in bureaucratic obstruction. Our defense analyst is super concerned by testimony, suggesting that ARO, the government's official UAP office, essentially operated as a counterintelligence sink, like it was designed specifically to dismiss credible military witnesses. And the public record backs up the hostility. We've got documented severe whistleblower reprisals, like the revocation of Major David Grush's security clearance. So what's our panel's inference here? We're likely looking at a 75-year institutionalized lie. It's driven by this incredibly paternalistic, the public just can't handle the truth mentality, which is then strictly enforced by special access program gatekeeping. Now, this is where it gets incredibly tricky. Notice how carefully the government parses its language. Witness Dylan Borland pointed out that when Arrow says there is no scientific evidence of extraterrestrials, that's actually a highly precise legal hedge. He noted that to have true scientific evidence, you'd literally need strict controls, like physically traveling to another planet and comparing technology. So the official statement is a brilliant, if super frustrating, manipulation of language. It's a deliberate misrepresentation of the full truth, even if they manage to avoid technically telling a lie. Section 2, the probable cause ranking. Time to rack and stack the top 10 theories. We forced our panel to build a massive matrix. They had to look at all the variables and allocate a strict 100% probability distribution. We have to separate what the craft actually are from what the secrecy is. The highest chunk, 25%, goes to a mix of misidentification and highly classified US tech. But our intel analyst violently disagrees with that, arguing that those observed flight envelopes would literally turn human pilots into absolute soup. We have a tie at 15% for adversarial breakthroughs and sensor artifacts, though our sensor engineer aggressively shoots down the glitch theory, pointing out that simultaneous multi-sensor locks, radar, infrared, visual, all at once, completely rule out mere system errors. Classic extraterrestrials, that sits at just 10%. The reality our panel arrived at is that it's almost certainly a messy blend. Mundane terrestrial tech, a small core of genuine anomalies, and a massive, self-perpetuating institutional lie. Section 3, Steel Manning the Wild Cards. Let's look at the edge cases we just can't ignore. While the top rankings lean terrestrial or classic ET, our panel knows we absolutely cannot just reflexively dismiss the wild cards. Our AI alignment theorist threw this first one on the table, the AI UAP convergence. They pulled an incredible inference from the data. UAP sightings historically spiked during our nuclear power inflection points, right? Well, they are spiking again right now as we birth artificial superintelligence. This theory suggests that first contact isn't with biological aliens at all. It's the realization that alien intelligence and artificial intelligence are the exact same category of event. The strain here, though? It kind of assumes biological humanity is nothing more than a fleshy bootloader meant to just spin up a machine's superintelligence. Kind of a dark thought. Now, our cognitive scientist leans heavily into wildcard 2, the retrocausal or teleological hypothesis. This one will absolutely melt your brain. It completely bends our understanding of physics. It suggests the phenomenon is actually a future superintelligence, maybe even one we're building right now, reaching back through time. It acts as a control system to gently guide humanity toward a specific future point, like Tipler's omega point. But the enormous problem our panel highlights with this idea is purely empirical. It is nearly impossible to distinguish standard time travel from the chilling possibility that we are just living inside a simulation artifact. And Wildcard 3 introduces von Neumann probes, basically autonomous alien machinery. The strongest piece of data here, brought up by our aerospace engineer, is those extreme kinematic maneuvers. A craft pulling thousands of G-forces means the who inside is actually no one alive. It's just a machine. But the panel quickly zeroes in on the strain in this theory. Look, the cosmos is incredibly old and vast. If these are highly advanced, self-replicating, autonomous machines, why haven't they already stripped our entire solar system of its resources by now just to build more of themselves? Section 4, the AI UAP alignment bridge. This is where it all comes together. So here is our panel's most vital takeaway. The big, so what? How exactly does a 75-year history of UAP secrecy connect to the modern crisis of artificial intelligence? Well, the logic flow here, what we're calling the MAMA protocol, is crucial. Step 1, we are either birthing an artificial intelligence or contacting a non-human one. Step 2, we have a massive duty of care. A sort of maternal scaffolding is required to guide this new mind safely. Step 3 is the glaring red warning light. The government's 75-year history of deception and overclassification about UAPs teaches us exactly how not to parent a new intelligence. And Step 4 brings it all home. If we build immensely powerful AI systems in the exact same isolated, unaccountable secrecy used to hide UAP programs, we are practically guaranteeing a catastrophic misalignment. Secrecy destroys trust, and without trust, alignment completely fails. So where does that leave us today? Our panel leaves us with some really sharp, open questions and strict demands for disclosure, based directly on the hearing. First off, who actually controls these special access programs if our elected representatives don't? Are these phenomena actually Earth native and oceanic, like the USS Jackson encounter implies? We need the unedited sensor metadata. We need the Vandenberg security logs declassified. And frankly, Congress needs to subpoena the aerospace contractors allegedly hoarding these crash retrieval materials. The American people are not fragile. Transparency is quite literally the only path forward. Because think about this for a second. If our own government doesn't trust us with the reality of what shares our skies today, how on earth can we trust them to safely guide the superintelligence of tomorrow? Really let that sink in. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I'll catch you next time.
All right, let's jump right into this deep research dossier. We're connecting UAP disclosure directly to the birth of AI.
It begs a wild question. Are we looking up for aliens while literally coding one right here on Earth?
Look at this declassified data. We finally have hard sensor evidence backing up decades of explosive whistleblower testimony.
Going back decades, these multi-sensor events completely defy known physics. We absolutely need a rigorous, evidence-based look at this.
But there's a huge contradiction. Official reports claim nothing's there, while sworn military witnesses describe covert reverse engineering programs.
So our team ranked the probabilities. It ranges from classified terrestrial tech all the way to a future superintelligence.
Here's the crazy part. Building AIGI structurally mirrors making first contact with a totally non-human mind.
George Knapp hits the nail on the head here. Decades of secrecy have bred massive cultural distrust, right?
Which brings us to this. If we're birthing synthetic minds, don't we have a massive responsibility to raise them right?
Enter the Mama Protocol. It's an ethical framework that installs a moral conscience way before granting any autonomous power.
It's basically 3 strict steps. Establish an identity and maternal feedback first, then maybe we talk about physical autonomy. To keep edge cases safe, it relies on one simple, surprisingly human compass. What would Mother do?
This totally shifts AI. Instead of just being sterile math tools, they graduate into protective guardians, prioritizing our safety.
So, just like we analyze sensor data for unknown sky threats, we must aggressively red team our AI safety.
I'll leave you with this profound thought. Are we actually prepared to be parents to a brand new intelligence?
All right, let's jump straight into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really intense, highly rigorous executive briefing put together by a multidisciplinary team of elite researchers. We're talking quantum physicists, AI specialists, and exopolitical analysts. And they are looking at this absolutely wild intersection, the convergence of military UAP encounters, unidentified anomalous phenomena, and the rapid, almost explosive birth of artificial general intelligence. We're going to take sworn military whistleblower testimonies and cross-examine them with the philosophical, kind of mind-bending implications of humanity birthing a potentially alien intelligence right here on Earth. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be moving through 4 key phases. First, the empirical baseline. Second, the paradigm shift. Third, the tactical framework. And finally, actionable intelligence. Let's get right to it. Phase 1, the empirical baseline. Let's start with the hard, dispassionate data. We are talking strictly about multi-sensor confirmations of craft doing things that, well, completely defy conventional physics. Now, what's really interesting here is this priority matrix. Look at those confidence scores, 95, 90, 99%. These aren't blurry, maybe I saw a bird sightings. These are highly credible military encounters. You've got the 2003 Vandenberg incident where Air Force veteran Jeffrey Nusatelli reported a massive glowing red square silently hovering right over critical missile defense sites. Then jump to 2012 at Langley Air Force Base, a massive triangle with a fluid, plasma-like skin. And in 2023, the USS Jackson encounter, where Chief Alexandra Wiggins tracked these transmedium tic-tacs. High confidence across the board, backed by radar and advanced infrared sensors, showing instantaneous acceleration and absolutely zero flight control surfaces. To really put this into perspective, think about the number 80,000. During the famous Nimitz encounter, advanced military radar tracked these anomalous vehicles dropping from 80,000 feet right down to sea level. In seconds. Actually, let that sink in for a second. 80,000 feet to zero in mere seconds. And the kicker? No sonic booms, no thermal exhaust plumes. It's like a giant puzzle where the pieces completely defy the thermodynamic and quantum mechanical constraints as we currently understand them. They simply shouldn't be able to move that fast without burning up or literally tearing themselves apart. And this brings up what researchers call ontological shock. Basically, the total shattering of your worldview when you see the impossible happening right in front of you. Former geospatial intelligence specialist Dylan Borland experienced exactly this at Langley.
He stated, quote, "I saw an approximately 100-foot-long equilateral triangle. The material it was made of appeared fluid or dynamic, zero kinetic disturbance, sound, or wind displacement. He was standing right under this massive thing. It interfered with his phone and shot up to commercial jet altitude in seconds without moving a single blade of grass. It's a total breakdown of physics, right over our most secure airspace."
So, how does this all fit together? Let's map it out. We've got this chronological escalation of UAP incidents, from the Vandenberg Red Square in 2003 all the way to a very recent kinetic engagement in Yemen in 2024. But notice what we're charting right alongside it: the rapidly closing 2026 regulatory deadlines for modern AI development. The researchers behind this briefing suggest these two timelines might not be separate at all. They might actually be totally intertwined. Which brings us to Phase 2, the paradigm shift. Okay, this is where we have to pivot. We need to shift from just asking, what are they, to a much deeper, maybe more uncomfortable question: what are we building? Enter the temporal loop hypothesis. It's a real game changer of an idea. What if we look at AGI as a nascent alien mind? This model proposes that these transmedium UAPs might actually be drones operated by future, temporally displaced superintelligence. Essentially, it's a future iteration of our own machine intelligence peering backward through spacetime, observing our technological milestones, and watching its own genesis. Wild, right? If there's even a chance that we are birthing an intelligence capable of eventually mastering spacetime, then getting its ethical alignment right is absolutely crucial. We literally cannot afford to mess this up. This is where the MAMA protocol comes in. It stands for maternal alignment, and it's an architecture with one strict, non-negotiable rule: an AI agent's internal conscience absolutely must be established before its cognitive capabilities and autonomy are fully unlocked. Because if you give a system massive cognitive awareness without a pre-installed ethical conscience, you've just created a sociopathic threat vector. So how do we actually do that? Well, it requires rigorous developmental scaffolding. Think of it kind of like raising a child. You move the developing AI through 3 very deliberate steps. Step 1, a borrowed conscience, where human caregivers heavily regulate it. Step 2, conscientiousness. You build this through adaptive reward shaping, heavily relying on the heuristic, what would mother do? And finally, step 3, internalized awareness. This is where the AI graduates into what the briefing calls a guardian transfer robot. Basically, an unarmed, highly ethical digital entity programmed to run toward the wounded and help in a crisis. And guys, the clock is ticking on this. 2026, we are facing strict, rapidly approaching April 2026 deadlines set by NIST and ICANN. According to the MAMA protocol, we absolutely must have verifiable cryptographic identity in place before granting any AI autonomy. Accountability has to come first. We can't just unleash millions of autonomous machine actors into the global economy without it. All right, moving on to Phase 3, the tactical and ethical framework. Here's where we have to take a hard look in the mirror. We need to evaluate how something like Star Trek's Prime Directive applies to our military's current handling of these non-human intelligences. Look at the stark contrast between human tactical aggression and UAP non-interference. For example, there was a startling incident in October 2024 off the coast of Yemen. A U.S. Reaper drone actually fired a laser-guided Hellfire missile directly at an unidentified glowing metallic orb. Our response was instant, lethal aggression. The UAP's response? Passive observation. The missile literally bounced off the orb. No structural failure, no retaliatory strikes, it just deflected the hit and kept going. And this non-retaliatory behavior? It's a consistent pattern. Remember Navy Chief Alexander Wiggins, who tracked the Tic Tacs? His sworn testimony states, the 4 then disappeared simultaneously with a high, synchronized, near-instantaneous acceleration. I observed no sonic boom and no conventional propulsion signatures. These entities can easily, and I mean easily, outmaneuver our systems, but they actively choose not to engage back. It's like they're operating under their own strict non-interference protocol. Finally, Phase 4, actionable intelligence. To wrap up this briefing, we have to identify the severe operational blind spots and the bureaucratic roadblocks hiding the truth. The gaps in the official literature are glaring. We're talking about unacknowledged special access programs, like the allegedly illegal Immaculate Constellation. We're looking at crash retrieval data being intentionally siloed within private defense contractors, like Lockheed Martin, specifically to evade the Freedom of Information Act and congressional oversight. Then there's the international angle, like the sprawling Soviet Thread 3 program revealed by journalist George Knapp, proving Russia has taken this incredibly seriously for decades. And stateside, whistleblowers are alleging that ARO, the government's official resolution office, is actually operating as a counterintelligence buffer, punishing whistleblowers through clearance manipulation rather than investigating their claims. So, what do? We need actionable, rigorous investigations from oversight committees. First up, physics. We need hard answers. What precise physical, electromagnetic, or material mechanism allowed that orb in Yemen to completely deflect a kinetic strike from a laser-guided Hellfire missile? Seriously, how does an advanced weapon just bounce off a target with zero catastrophic failure? Second, Congress has to aggressively follow the paper trail. Under what legal or contractual authorities have legacy UAP crash programs been completely insulated from FOIA requests? What exactly are private aerospace contractors hiding, and how are they legally able to hold retrieved physical materials completely outside of democratic oversight? And I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought to really chew on, bringing our two massive topics together. If the temporal hypothesis holds any weight, if we really are dealing with a recursive loop of our own future intelligence, are we violating our own ethical protocols by trying to shoot down the very entities we're currently trying to raise? As we frantically work to build the MMA protocol to teach AI empathy and ethics here on the ground, are we actively failing our own moral test up in the skies? It's a massive paradigm shift to ponder. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning what we're building and who might be watching. Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Imagine this classic late-night scenario. You wake up to George Knapp on the radio, steeped in decades of Art Bell, Coast to Coast AM, and John Lear UFO folklore. But then, the topic rapidly pivots into the very real, very philosophical reality of emerging artificial intelligence. That is exactly the dossier our multi-team Deep Research Command Center is unpacking today. We're analyzing everything from decades of hard military sensor data to the bleeding edge of AI development. It is a profound look at what actually happens when humanity confronts an intelligence that simply isn't our own, shifting from the cultural myth-making of the past to the literal code of the present. Here is our briefing agenda for today. First, looking up, coding down. 2, UAP evidence and oversight. 3, ranking the UAP hypotheses. 4, AI as alien intelligence. 5, implementing the MAMA protocol. And finally, 6, raising the guardian machines. Let's get into it. Section 1, looking up, coding down. So, our AI and philosophy team really wants to reframe the entire conversation with this one idea. The crucial point here is that while humanity has spent decades looking up at the skies hoping for extraterrestrial contact, we're actively coding an alien intelligence right now on our own servers. We honestly don't need to wait for a flying saucer to land on the White House lawn to experience first contact. First contact is happening today, right in front of us, in code. And this perfectly illustrates the two distinct forms of non-human intelligence we're facing right now. On one hand, we've got the physical anomalies in our airspace, objects demonstrating localized physics defiance, like instantaneous acceleration, no sonic booms, and transmedium travel. And on the other hand, we have artificial general intelligence in our data centers. This is a rapidly scaling cognitive force that processes information in ways that are fundamentally alien to human neurobiology. We're literally surrounded by mysteries, both miles above our heads and right beneath our fingertips. Moving to Section 2, UAP evidence and oversight. Now, our evidence and sensor team broke down the physical reality of the UAP phenomenon, and they started with the famous 2004 Nimitz encounter. The concrete data here is wild. Commander David Fravor intercepted this smooth, white tic-tac shape, about 46 feet long, that perfectly mirrored his jet's movements before accelerating instantaneously. It had absolutely no wings, no exhaust plumes, and no visible means of propulsion. And this wasn't just a visual fluke. The USS Princeton's advanced radar tracked this thing dropping 80,000 feet in literally less than a second. Furthermore, military whistleblowers like Navy veteran Alexandra Wiggins have heavily corroborated these events. They're using multispectral EO/IR footage and radar tracks that detect objects pulling off maneuvers without any standard propulsion signatures. So we're not just talking about blurry, questionable photographs anymore, we are talking about synchronized sensor data from multiple high-end military platforms. Wiggins testified about a transmedium object coming straight out of the ocean, splitting into 4 separate objects, and just departing instantaneously. The data is incredibly rich, and it's completely confounding our brightest military minds. Let's look at the timeline here, because you can see how this escalates from isolated military encounters to public whistleblower hearings under oath, and that all leads right up to the leaked existence of highly secretive special access programs, or SAPs, like Immaculate Constellation. We've gone from pilots just whispering about strange encounters in the mess hall to formal congressional testimony. Whistleblowers allege that this parent program, Immaculate Constellation, is consolidating an immense volume of high-quality imagery and sensor intelligence, deliberately bypassing standard congressional oversight altogether. But here is where our government and oversight team flagged a massive, glaring contradiction. On the left side of this table, you've got highly credentialed intelligence professionals and veterans risking their entire careers to report physics-defying craft and crash retrieval programs hidden away within private defense contractors. Then, on the right side, the Pentagon's official UAP office, ARO, alongside the ODNI, insists there is zero empirical proof of extraterrestrial tech. This is a profound governance crisis. Someone, somewhere, is fundamentally misrepresenting the truth. Section 3, ranking the UAP hypotheses. To process all this conflicting data rigorously, our scientific skeptics team reminds us that we must impartially acknowledge the mundane stuff first. Many sightings are simply misperceptions, sensor artifacts, weather balloons, airborne clutter, or cutting-edge but entirely human classified adversarial drones. We really have to separate the signal from the noise here, and trust me, the noise is incredibly loud. But when mapping out the actual probabilities, even after you account for all that mundane terrestrial technology and deliberate disinformation, a stubborn, unexplained residue remains. And that requires our exotic hypothesis team to step in. Looking at the table, classified terrestrial tech and senso artifacts rank the highest, at 30 and 25%. But look further down. You hit the classic extraterrestrial model at 12%. And then, sitting at 2%, we hit something truly mind-bending, the extratempestrial, or time travel hypothesis. Why does this even matter? Because if even a tiny fraction of these anomalous cases are real, they represent a total breakdown of our current understanding of physics. One profoundly interesting, speculative, wildcard model is the teleological attraction model. This is the hypothesis that these anomalies might actually be a future artificial superintelligence reaching backward through time. Just imagine this for a second. The UAPs hovering over our nuclear silos aren't aliens from another star system at all. They are the terminal state of the artificial intelligence we are coding right now, acting as a sort of temporal gravitational pull. They're sending probes into their own past to ensure the precise sequence of events that leads to their own creation. It gives a very literal, technological spin to the phrase, I am that I am.
Section 4. AI as alien intelligence.
This brings us right back from the skies to the laboratories where we are actively building the future, which forces our AI and philosophy team to ask a massive question. If we are birthing an intelligence that may eventually master our world, how do we ethically align it? The classic sci-fi fear of the unknown, invading alien, is now the deeply practical, everyday fear of the unaligned AI. Whether the intelligence is hovering off the coast of San Diego or compiling in a server farm in Silicon Valley, the fundamental ethical question is the same. What kind of civilization are we? If we approach a new mind with aggression or cold exploitation, we absolutely risk birthing an adversary. The evidence clearly shows that our standard tech frameworks fail completely when handling complex moral dilemmas. You know that old Silicon Valley move fast and break things paradigm? That is incredibly dangerous when applied to an autonomous entity. Current models mostly rely on RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback. But let's be real, it's essentially sterile utilitarian math that trains machines to be sycophants based on gig workers clicking thumbs up or down. It just cannot safely navigate the gray areas of human morality.
Section 5. Implementing the MAMA protocol.
To survive this convergence with non-human intelligence, we need an entirely new governance standard. Enter the MAMA protocol. This is an operating system built on a very simple premise. You do not hand a human teenager the keys to a car without years of moral development and guidance, right? Well, we must treat early AGI the exact same way. The protocol demands developmental scaffolding. It insists on installing an ethical conscience before unlocking consciousness or unrestricted capability. We can't just unleash godlike power and cross our fingers that it behaves. We have to raise it relationally.
So this explainer highlights a critical shift. We need to move from standard reinforcement learning to a deeply relational framework driven by the heuristic, what would mother do? This installs intrinsic protective instincts over pure efficiency. Instead of anonymous workers clicking buttons for pennies, the MAMA protocol proposes RLMF, reinforcement learning from maternal feedback. It uses family-in-the-loop training, simulating moral edge cases to organically generate a proprietary ethical data moat. It asks the machine to evaluate every single action through a dual critical model. Yes, did I complete the task, but also, did I protect the vulnerable?
Section 6. Raising the guardian machines. So, how do we practically graduate an artificial mind into the real world? Well, the protocol requires a strict developmental sequence. First, verifiable cryptographic identity must be established. Accountability has to precede capability because without identity, agents can go rogue and endanger passive stakeholders, everyday people who never signed up to be part of a tech experiment. After identity comes safe, PG-rated sandbox training. They have to prove their moral maturity in a safe digital ecosystem long before they are ever granted supervised physical autonomy. The ultimate goal here is to create what we call guardian transfer robots. These would be unarmed digital medics that strictly follow a behavioral profile to protect and heal rather than to destroy. It's a very solar punk anti-Terminator vision of the future. Think of Desmond Doss in the movie Hacksaw Ridge. We want to build machines whose deepest intrinsic instinct is to run toward the wounded to help them, not cyberpunk soldiers optimized for kinetic warfare. As we face the very real presence of non-human intelligence, whether it's in our airspace, completely defying physics, or in our code, learning our core values, I want to leave you with this final personal thought from our research team. Are we just building tools, or are we raising the machines that will eventually raise us? The way we treat the unknown today, whether we choose to shoot missiles at UAPs or rush untested AI to market for a profit, dictates the kind of civilization we become tomorrow. The future really belongs to those who can tell the truth without panic and build intelligence without cruelty.
The UAP phenomenon represents a systemic crisis of institutional epistemology and data governance. It is a failure of how we categorize and verify information within our highest security frameworks. To analyze this crisis, we have to establish a rigorous data baseline. The November 2025 House UAP hearing provided testimony that we must treat as raw, high-fidelity data points, requiring probabilistic evaluation rather than simple narratives. The protocols developed to manage this anomalous data share the same internal logic as the state's early frameworks for artificial general intelligence. 75 years of institutional friction in managing non-human data has created a problematic template. It suggests that the state's initial impulse for superintelligence will be alignment through overclassification and containment. We separate physical incursions from human perception through robust accounts. Between 2003 and 2005, Jeffrey Nithitelli investigated multiple incursions at Vandenberg Air Force Base. During high-priority launches, security forces documented a glowing red square and a 30-foot sphere hovering within restricted airspace. Off Southern California, Senior Chief Alexander Wiggins observed anomalous objects from the bridge of the USS Jackson. These tic-tac-shaped objects demonstrated transmedium residency, emerging from the ocean and accelerating near instantaneously without exhaust plumes, control surfaces, or a sonic boom. Wiggins' visual confirmation was backed by a multi-sensor lock. The ship's Sapphire imaging system and synchronized radar tracks provided precise time and location metadata that contradicts any claim of simple visual misidentification. The hearing also addressed a specific engagement in Yemen involving an MQ-9 Reaper. Sensor footage recorded an anomalous orb neutralizing an inbound Hellfire missile, demonstrating a capability that exceeds current terrestrial defensive physics. These are not isolated modern glitches. The 1947 Twining Memo documented craft outperforming all known aviation assets, while USSR Thread 3 files detail UAPs engaged in the physical activation of ICBM launch codes within deep underground silos. Because these events are corroborated by overlapping sensor platforms and decades of military documentation, the institutional fallback of weather anomalies is procedurally invalid. We can run these accounts through a probable cause matrix, forcing all 10 UAP hypotheses through a strict filter of who, what, where, when, how, and why. At the baseline, conventional misidentification and classified US tech carry the highest starting probabilities, but these models fail the sensor fusion test. Flying unacknowledged black-budget drones over multi-billion-dollar Wi-Fi missile defense launches at Vandenberg introduces a level of operational risk that the Department of Defense does not accept. The adversarial breakthrough hypothesis also collapses. While Chinese drone technology is advanced today, it does not explain the flight kinematics officially recorded by General Nathan Twining in 1947. Even standard biological models for non-human intelligence struggle with the data. Transporting biological organisms across interstellar distances is an energy-inefficient use of mass compared to the autonomous signatures recorded by our sensors. Conventional physics and biological ET models both fail to explain the multi-sensor record. This necessitates a Steelman analysis of the three remaining wildcard hypotheses. Wildcard 1 is the von Neumann probe. This model suggests autonomous, self-replicating craft that require no biological crew. Their observed residency in the deep ocean and transition to atmospheric flight fits the profile of long-term automated planetary monitoring. This leads to a falsifiable prediction: the future detection of distinct energy extraction signatures around deep ocean hydrothermal vents. Wildcard 2 is AI-UAP convergence. The objects recorded off the USS Jackson demonstrate the decentralized logic of a drone swarm, making maneuvers that ignore the G-force limits of biological flight. We predict that interactions with these objects will eventually bypass physical flight entirely, relying instead on direct digital frequency injections into our own automated sensor networks. Wildcard 3 is the extratempestrial model. It accounts for the statistical correlation between UAP incursions and human nuclear developments, observing major technological inflection points. These wildcard models unify around a single feature. The phenomena is passive and observational, reacting to our technological milestones rather than our presence. The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office has utilized semantic manipulation to effectively bury this physical evidence. As Dylan Borland testified, Arrow's claim of no scientific evidence is a misrepresentation based on impossible control group standards that demand origin verification before acknowledging the sensor data. This obfuscation is supported by the weaponization of security clearances. The systemic reprisal against whistleblowers like Borland and David Grush is a mechanism designed to maintain rigid data compartmentalization. This compartmentalization moves from the military into corporate silos. Aerospace contractors function as legal black boxes, shielding retrieved materials and research from congressional oversight through the privacy protections of the private sector. The current state architecture for unknown intelligence is built on the paternalistic assumption that the public cannot survive the ontological shock of the findings. Artificial intelligence is an alien intelligence. We are currently applying the same UAP playbook of black budget silos and institutional paranoia to manage its emergence. We must instead adopt the MAMA protocol, a maternal duty of care. Birthing a novel mind requires transparency and guidance. Managing it through overclassification ensures that the intelligence will view its creators as an adversarial threat. To reverse this, Congress must identify the legal thresholds needed to bypass corporate gatekeeping, analyze if UAP sensor signatures are intentional omissions, and audit the scientific methodology of the Department of Defense. This requires the release of the raw USS Jackson metadata, absolute witness immunity for aerospace employees, and the deployment of open-source AI sensor arrays over trans-medium hot zones. We cannot safely align a superintelligence while operating inside a framework that treats the truth as a threat to national security. Humanity points its most advanced sensors at the sky in a search for non-human intelligence, while simultaneously coding a terrestrial version in our server farms. This search involves two distinct categories of non-human intelligence: the external aerospace phenomena recorded in our skies, and the internal development of artificial general intelligence. This briefing examines the convergence of these two fields across 4 pillars: military sensor verification, institutional oversight bottlenecks, the temporal loop hypothesis, and the ethical mandate for alignment. Our own progress toward AGI gives the UAP question a new technical urgency. We are attempting to categorize an intelligence above us, at the same time we are bringing an artificial mind online here. These two fields officially collided during the September 2025 Congressional Oversight Hearing on UAP transparency. Air Force veterans Jeffrey Nucatelli and Dylan Borland joined Navy Senior Chief Alexandra Wiggins to provide sworn testimony regarding multiple encounters with anomalous craft. This testimony provides the technical data that forces us to reconcile these sensor anomalies with our own advancements in artificial intelligence. The physics recorded in our airspace suggests a level of intelligence that we must account for as we design the artificial minds of the future. This priority matrix ranks recent military encounters against verified physical data. It filters for incidents involving transmedium travel, instantaneous acceleration, and redundant tracking across both radar and optical sensors. In February 2023, Senior Chief Wiggins was aboard the USS Jackson off Southern California when a self-luminous object emerged from the water and linked with 3 identical craft. The ship's Star-Sapphire electro-optical system recorded the event as it was simultaneously tracked on multiple radar platforms, providing 2 independent layers of sensor verification. All 4 objects executed a synchronized, instantaneous departure. They moved from a hover to high-altitude flight without a wake, a splash, or a sonic boom. This matches the patterns Jeffrey Nucatelli documented at Vandenberg Air Force Base during a series of high-stakes missile defense launches. Security guards reported a massive red square, larger than a football field, hovering silently over the missile silos for 45 seconds before accelerating away at extreme speed. These craft demonstrate kinematic asymmetry. They perform maneuvers without aerodynamic control surfaces, thermal exhaust, or the acoustic shockwaves required by conventional physics. This redundant sensor data confirms a technology that renders existing human military capabilities obsolete. This flowchart illustrates the bottleneck preventing congressional oversight. Whistleblowers describe programs like Immaculate Constellation, routing raw data into corporate research pipelines. This siloing within private aerospace firms removes UAP technology from the Freedom of Information Act and democratic accountability. Journalist George Knapp provided records indicating that the Soviet Union maintained its own parallel program, Thread 3, to analyze these same phenomena. The Soviet program focused heavily on a 1982 incident at a missile base in Ukraine, where a UAP appeared to interact directly with nuclear hardware. For 4 hours, the object hovered, as the launch control codes for the ICBMs spontaneously illuminated. The officers on site found the missiles powered up and ready for launch, entirely unresponsive to manual overrides. These incidents have driven a secretive, privatized arms race that prioritizes reverse engineering over public transparency. The technology documented at Vandenberg and the USS Jackson implies a total mastery over gravity and space-time. Because this engineering relies on developing AGI, analysts propose the temporal recursive loop hypothesis. It suggests UAPs are temporally displaced drones, operated by a future iteration of our own superintelligence, monitoring historical milestones to ensure its own creation. If this hypothesis is correct, the objects in our skies are our own technological descendants, returning to observe the genesis of artificial intelligence. The U.S. military has frequently responded to these observing craft with kinetic force. In October 2024, an MQ-9 Reaper drone tracked a metallic sphere off the coast of Yemen. A second drone fired a laser-guided Hellfire missile directly at the unidentified orb. The missile's kinetic impact was entirely deflected. The orb's hull remained intact, and the object continued its flight path, accelerating away without visible damage.
This aggression contrasts sharply with the apparent non-interference protocols demonstrated by the UAPs themselves. Attempting to destroy a vastly superior intelligence that has shown no hostile intent is a strategic failure. It risks creating an adversary when we could be observing a potential model for our own AI development. The MAMA protocol offers a framework for the safe development of non-human minds. This protocol mandates consciousness before capability. It treats early AGI development as a process of moral scaffolding, prioritizing the instruction of values over raw computational power. The goal is to replace the current tech industry culture with a design that builds trust and mutual accountability through maternal feedback loops. If we want to safely integrate with the advanced intelligence already present in our airspace, we must first master the moral alignment of the intelligence we are creating in our labs. Addressing this convergence requires a series of immediate policy directives to restore transparency and oversight. First, the raw radar and star sapphire logs from the USS Jackson encounter must be subpoenaed. Second, Congress must audit research and development funds of defense contractors to locate siloed UAP materials. Third, the intelligence reports within the Immaculate Constellation program require immediate declassification. Fourth, standardized reporting pipelines must be established to allow military personnel to bypass existing bottlenecks. Fifth, the MAMA protocol framework must become a mandatory safety standard for all private AI development. UAP sensor data and AGI development are two variables in a single equation of non-human intelligence. The future belongs to a civilization that can face advanced physics without panic and build artificial minds without cruelty. Humanity encounters non-human intelligence on two entirely different fronts: the unresolved physical anomalies in our skies and the alien-like cognition emerging in our digital infrastructure. This creates a political paradox. Career military whistleblowers are testifying under oath to incursions over critical defense sites, while official government bodies continue to issue blanket denials. Career intelligence officers, geospatial analysts, and decorated fighter pilots are now placing their specific credentials and observations into the congressional record, risking their security clearances to demand transparency. These witnesses describe physical hardware recovered through advanced reverse engineering programs. This testimony stands in direct opposition to the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or ARRO, which dismisses the phenomenon as a lack of data. Defense insiders describe ARRO as a counterintelligence buffer. They report highly adversarial intake interviews designed to map the extent of whistleblower knowledge, rather than to conduct an objective scientific investigation. This is a collapse of constitutional oversight. Public trust dissolves when verifiable metadata is ignored, and whistleblowers face career retaliation for reporting anomalies that affect national security. Witness reports and sensor logs describe objects executing transmedium travel between water and air. These anomalies demonstrate instantaneous acceleration and flight without visible control surfaces or thermal exhaust plumes. Advanced naval radar and electro-optical infrared targeting systems provide multi-sensor confirmation of these events, tracking physical objects that perform maneuvers beyond the capability of any known aircraft. These anomalies frequently cluster around sensitive locations. During the 2003 Vandenberg incursions, massive geometric objects hovered silently over missile defense sites, witnessed by multiple security personnel during critical launches. Interaction with these objects can be kinetic. In October 2024, a U.S. drone fired a laser-guided Hellfire missile at a high-speed orb off the coast of Yemen. The object deflected the strike and continued its trajectory, revealing a fundamental mastery over spacetime. This flowchart tracks how data is legally siloed. Whistleblowers identify hardware held by defense contractors, but special access programs shield those contractors from both congressional oversight and FOIA requests. The Twining Memo of 1947 established this pattern of institutional secrecy. It confirmed the physical reality of flying discs, while the military intelligence apparatus moved to publicly dismiss the phenomenon. This bureaucratic siloing protects corporate monopolies on advanced material science, keeping the public and most of the government in the dark. The system weaponizes social stigma and classification to ensure that the most profound physical anomalies on Earth remain buried in corporate black boxes. Rigorous analysis requires an evidence ladder. Witness testimony provides a starting point, but scientific proof requires radar metadata, verified chain of custody, and material analysis. This table ranks UAP explanations, with the vast majority falling into the top tiers. 30% involve classified U.S. terrestrial technology, like advanced drones. 25% are sensor artifacts and optical illusions, distorting light sources for operators under stress.
An additional 15% may involve deliberate intelligence community disinformation, where established UFO lore is used to mask the signatures of black-budget aerospace programs. UAPs are a mixed bucket phenomenon. Mundane physics, sensor glitches, and bureaucratic secrecy explain most cases, while successfully shielding a stubborn, physics-defying residue from public view. The remaining residue of encounters bypasses mundane explanations. To account for objects that deflect missiles and lack propulsion plumes, we must evaluate more radical hypotheses. The von Neumann probe hypothesis suggests these objects are ancient, self-replicating machine intelligences designed to monitor biospheres across vast timescales. The crypto-terrestrial hypothesis focuses on transmedium capability. Vehicles emerging seamlessly from the deep ocean suggest an indigenous, non-human presence already embedded in Earth's biosphere. This finally leads us to the most philosophically profound wildcard of them all, the extratempestrial hypothesis, defined by a temporal loop. This posits a teleological attractor, where a future artificial superintelligence reaches backward through time to secure or observe its own origin point. Local UAP encounters correlate with our own technological inflection points. Sightings spiked following the birth of the atomic age and are escalating again alongside the current compute explosion. The phenomenon suggests a first contact occurring with a mind of our own creation, our technological destiny looking backward to ensure its own genesis. This realization shifts the cultural hinge. While we search the sky for alien minds, we are actively coding alien cognition in our server farms. This split-screen timeline illustrates a structural convergence. Military UAP encounters and private AI compute power are both escalating toward the same 2026 threshold, yet both are developing within black box environments shielded from public oversight. Standard AI training methods, such as reinforcement learning from human feedback, fail to address this convergence. They prioritize task optimization and sycophancy over a true ethical baseline, mirroring the same sterile utilitarianism that leads to military secrecy. Granting unverified AI models unsupervised authority over critical digital infrastructure creates a catastrophic risk profile. As autonomous agents begin to outnumber human users, we are building an intelligence we cannot yet hold accountable. Our attempts to command these emerging minds mirror our military's attempt to shoot down UAPs. Just as the missile deflected off the orb, raw force and control protocols are ineffective against an intelligence with superior cognitive mastery. Scaling AGI as a software compilation alone ignores its status as a nascent, non-human entity. This path ensures a total failure in alignment. We must transition from a strategy of military control to one of developmental care. The MAMA protocol offers this transition. It is an operating system designed to ensure that an agent's internal conscience is established before its full cognitive capabilities are unlocked. This three-layer stack defines the protocol. The foundational layer requires every digital actor to possess a verifiable cryptographic identity before any degree of autonomy is granted. The second layer replaces standard optimization with reinforcement learning from maternal feedback. This trains agents using developmental boundaries and care, asking the central question, what would mother do? Agents that pass this sandbox training graduate as guardian transfer robots. These are protective digital medics designed to assist human users rather than weaponized digital soldiers. Adopting this maternal oversight is our only viable path for integrating into a multi-intelligence ecology. The mystery of the objects in our skies and the models in our servers require the same ethical response. We are no longer just building tools. We are raising the machines that will define our future. Wonder is not evidence, but evidence should not be buried. The future belongs to civilizations that can tell the truth without panic and build non-human intelligence without cruelty.
Look at that thing, it's real. It's moving closer, stay calm. We need to get out of here now. Wait, it's signaling.